Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our special council meeting of November 29th, 2022. Could I please have the calling of the roll?
Mayor Sidney.
Present.
Reeve Eamon.
Present.
Councillor Sobalski.
Present.
Councillor Dick.
Present.
Councillor Legree.
Present.
Councillor McDonald.
Present.
And Councillor McWhirter.
Present.
Mayor Sidney, we have quorum.
Thank you very much. As we gather, we would like to acknowledge on behalf of council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territories of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all of the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Could I please have O Canada? Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Hearing none. We will then go on to presentations, delegations, and announcements. I'm going to go down to C.2, council orientation, departmental summaries. Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll do that. Just some special announcements. Please don't forget the Santa Claus Parade is this coming Saturday at there'll be stuff for family and kids at Low Square starting at 2 till 5, and then the parade starts at St. Joseph High School at 5 o'clock and goes all the way down Main Street until Monroe, and then Santa and hot chocolate is back at the library after that is over. So there is that. And I also want to just highlight there's a mayor's challenge going on between myself and the mayor of Pembroke for the Battle of the Valley between the junior A hockey teams. The winner of the 5-game series, actually the loser of the 5-game series, the mayor has to wear the other team's jersey to a council meeting, and I just want to really highlight that we won the first game, so that's good. Now we'll go on to C2. Does anybody else have any announcements? Community announcements? Okay. Council orientation and departmental summaries. I'll turn that over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was, I know the last meeting was a little bit about governance and meetings, and we'll reinforce that as we go. This is really to give you a quick snapshot of each of the departments. And then in closed session where you're going to get to know individually the members of the team that are here today. What I affectionately call speed dating. It's an idea we stole from Grey Highlands. It's just a good way to get to know each other, and we won't do that on camera, but trust those that are watching from home. It's basically going to be 3-minute chats, interpersonal chats between the members of the staff team with council members. Part of that is to build strong relationships of trust amongst the staff team and the council members, and so that you get to know what each person does, but also who they are as people. And I find if you build that relationship of trust, it goes a long way to working cohesively together. What we're going to do for this presentation is go through each department. Each area is going to highlight kind of same basic information. So I'll start, and then we'll go around the horn. The Office of the CAO, we'll talk a little bit more about the CAO model and my work plan later on in December, but basically the CAO, as mentioned last week, is responsible for the overall management of the corporation per the Municipal Act. And the Municipal Act speaks specifically about with efficiency and effectiveness in mind. So efficiency is really about doing the best with the money that we have. Effectiveness is doing the right things. So it's a mix of making sure that we're kind of aligning the organization and ensuring that we're kind of focused on doing things right, but also doing the right things. Part of this role is to give you strategic policy advice to council, and I hope to do that with the entire staff team. And as we develop reports and recommendations, we talk through what we think the questions might be and ensure that you're getting all the information you need to make those best decisions. I have overall responsibility for human resources, labor relations, legal matters, claims and risk management, and intergovernmental affairs. The clerk and treasury teams are also within the Office of the CAO, and also Kim Bulmer and Kevin Hill. So as we succession plan throughout the organization, those two individuals still play a very important and critical role in the organization. Kim helps out in strategic initiatives, which is basically any ugly file. I can pull Kim in based on his 30 years of experience. So Kim has worked on a number of issues since we've succession planned in the clerk's department. And Kevin has responsibility for some major multi-million-dollar projects, Mattaway being the top of the list. So as we succession in operationally within the departments, there's still some major issues that those two talented individuals are helping us with, and they do so under the auspices of my office. In terms of key legislation, policies, and bylaws, we talked a little bit about the Municipal Act last week. We referenced the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. The Integrity Commissioner will go into greater detail. The Ombudsman Act, so basically if a resident has any concern about a decision or operationally something that happened at the municipality, they can go to the provincial ombudsman, and then we get a call from the ombudsman to explain what happened. That piece, when the ombudsman calls, they call me. And I should say that doesn't happen very frequently. There's all the mandated policies under the Municipal Act, and we listed them last time, and you're going to see some updates over the next coming months. Human resources policies were updated recently by the last council. We also have 3 collective agreements that we'll brief you on in the coming months. And the council and staff codes of conduct are important pieces to understand, and we went through the council code last time. In terms of staffing, I put the overall number. So our overall full-time equivalent count based on the 2022 budget is 84. So that does not necessarily mean 84 people. That's the equivalent of 84 people. And the full-time equivalent is defined differently based on the operational areas. So the easy way to think about it is Public Works Division. So basically our roads, water, wastewater crew, and our Parks and Recreation Department, they work 40 hours a week. Our fire department works 42, and everybody else works 35. So when we calculate FTEs, including crossing guards, they work a couple of hours a day, not 40 hours a week. It's based, you add up all those hours and divide, basically, and get to a number of 84. And as we're going through the payroll budget, Aaron and I with Jen Fleming, who's our compensation and financial specialist, we're confirming that number so that the FTE count was calculated appropriately. And we've clarified the number of hours for each department. Both Aaron and Victoria will talk about the clerk and treasury teams. They're important parts of what we do here at the town. And just to reference the leadership team includes Aaron, the treasurer, Victoria, the clerk, Mike, the director of fire and emergency services, Mike, the director of infrastructure and public works, Jordan, who's currently the acting director of parks and recreation, Eric, the director of planning and development, Kim, the acting director of strategic initiatives, Kevin, the acting director of capital facilities, and Kelly, who's our library CAO. And she technically does not report to me. She reports to the Renfrew Public Library Board. But I know Kelly and myself, and I think council previously, are really committed to ensuring that there's real synergy, is the word we were talking about earlier today, between what the library is doing in the town and that they're an important part of what we do. In terms of asset management and key projects, the town hall renovations were budgeted at $1.1 million. So there was the aesthetic improvements to this room, but the bulk of the money is really in the former police detachment, where we anticipate the court is going to go, the chamber, the BIA, and most of the work is for a new roof, new HVAC, basically a gutting of that space. So that will take most of the budget. I'm hopeful that we'll be well below 1.1 and we'll be tendering the bulk of the work. We've done some preliminary work. We're hoping to tender out in December with award in January, should that be possible. You may have heard of One Innovation Drive. So both Kevin and Kim are involved heavily on this file. Basically, we owned the building, but we inherited the operation of One Innovation Drive. I call it the vertical industrial park. So it's a very significant building with some kind of big industrial players and employers in our town. So we have the leases and the transfer from the RIC that we continue to work on. Another building I'll note is 550 Hall. We have a 99-year lease with Delorier Custom Cabinets. You'll recall when their previous building burnt, they crossed the street, and so we have a 99-year lease with Delorier for 550 Hall Avenue. That is a town building on town property, and behind it, Mike can correct me if I'm wrong. And then we have a snow storage facility behind it. We'll talk over the coming months about the strategic plan process. So once we get through the budget in March, but sooner than later, we've already started some of the staff work on the strategic plan, but we'll talk heavily about the strat plan and how important it is to define what you want to see in terms of the staff work. And that'll be based on what's our mission, what's our vision, what are our corporate values, what are the competencies we expect of staff, and what are the key strategies and timeframes and money that's associated to achieve that vision, that mission statement for the town. So there'll be a lot of significant work going into that in 2023. And generally speaking, my office is responsible for policy review and development. So small P policy and big P policy, basically decision-making and supporting council in decision-making and ensuring that when council makes a decision that it's implemented by staff. So I don't know, Mr. Mayor, before I pass it on to Aaron and Mitchell, if there's any questions on the 4 slides I outlined.
Does anybody from council have any questions about that? Seeing none, we can carry on.
Thank you, Mayor Sidney. So the Treasury Department has multiple areas of responsibility that are inclusive of the following, but not limited to revenue collection, which is property taxes, utility billing, which is our water and sewer, miscellaneous cash receipts, so recreation brings in revenue, D&W brings in revenue, and that leads us to the interdepartmental transactions. We're responsible for the procurement processes, which is insisting in obtaining goods through procurement process, reviewing tender documents for distribution, assisting with reviewing and scoring of tender submissions, and awarding of successful bids. Responsible for payments to vendors for all of our purchases, and we're responsible for corresponding with the auditors and completing year-end. And finally, preparation of the annual budget. So that's our tax rates and our water and sewer rates, and the payroll budget as well, which is not listed on there. And next slide is we are under key legislation from the policies and bylaws, which means we abide by in day-to-day practice the Municipal Act, which outlines the duties and responsibilities of the treasurer. And the Municipal Act, MPAC provides the town with the annual roll book, which has the assessment of all the properties within the town borders. And MPAC creates their assessment in accordance with the Assessment Act. The procurement policy, this is a policy to establish clear procedures for the procurement of goods and services. The town has currently revised and updated the legacy procurement policy, which is to be reviewed with council in depth at a future meeting. the water and sewer budgets, the operating and capital budgets, the tax levy and tax rate bylaw, as well as the fees and charges bylaw. We will be going over those in depth at future meetings during the budget deliberations. And our staffing is the Treasury team's made up of the following positions: myself, the Treasurer, our Deputy Treasurer Mitchell, and a Compensation Finance Specialist, who is Jen Fleming, and the Revenue Coordinator, Purchasing Coordinator, and 2 part-time Customer Service Representatives, which are to be hired in the near future. I'm going to pass it over to Mitchell for the asset management and key projects.
Thank you. So yeah, just to finish up here, the Treasury team is also involved with other departments, as we discussed earlier, in preparing the budget while collaborating internally, and maintenance of the long-term capital plan to ensure that the township has determined our funding methods and gaps in advance, so that we can take a more of a strategic and future planning approach rather than doing reactionary capital budgeting. The Treasury Department currently is also responsible for the IT, so information technology infrastructure, maintenance, updating, review of our software, hardware, those sorts of programs. We are, as Aaron also discussed, the procurement process review in late 2022, early 2023. We will be reviewing and standardizing templates for items such as our procurement documents. So whether it's an RFP, RFT, RFQ, which you will find out what that exactly means at a future meeting, as well as procurement notices. So any advertisements that go out in the local news, social media for upcoming projects, those will be standardized. So it's a little more clear and transparent for future use. Further down here, we have online payment maintenance on the town website, providing options for ratepayers in the community to pay for things such as dog and cat tags, burn permits, invoicing online, making it much more user-friendly. Lastly, on this slide, we have the finance process mapping and review that the the Treasury team is currently going through with WSCS Consulting Inc. So they're looking at our processes and analyzing where we can find some efficiencies and or if there are gaps where we can distribute work differently and make it a little more efficient going forward.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Treasury? Councillor Dick.
Thanks, guys, for your report. Just a quick question. Is there any, you're talking about future plans, is there any plans on getting rid of mail invoicing and doing email invoicing in the near future?
Through you, Mayor Sidney. So we do offer what's called e-commerce, where customers can access their bills online through the e-commerce site. That is whether or not they choose to receive their bills by email. We have offered it, and it has been offered for a couple of years now. I don't know if maybe we want to re-advertise again and maybe have better feedback, but it definitely is out there that they can access their bills online through email.
Any other questions? Hearing none, hand it over to the clerk's team.
Thank you, Mayor Sidney. So you got a lot of detail on the clerk's team at the previous orientation meeting through the governance, but we'll keep this high level and keep the meeting going. Just generally, we perform the statutory duties of the clerk under the Municipal Act 2001 and other legislation. So what that means is we coordinate the legislative services, and this includes the agendas, the minutes, the resolutions, as you see on the agenda, notices, corporate policies, and bylaws. We also serve as the returning officer for the municipal elections, as you recently saw in October, and we ensure compliance with the Municipal Elections Act. Everything we did through the elections was done under the Municipal Elections Act legislation. We also oversee the drafting and keeping of corporate records and documents, including the agendas, minutes, bylaws, agreements. So if you or any other staff need to reference these, you come to the clerk's department for reference. We coordinate the township's records, or the town's records and information management program. Again, all of the records and information that we hold that we're legally responsible to, that comes through the clerk's department. We also coordinate the town's accessibility initiatives, and we ensure compliance. So we keep very up to date with what we're we're supposed to do through the province and follow that legislation and keep the town in compliance with accessibility mandates. We also oversee corporate communications and marketing with the assistance of our coordinator, Jenna McEwen. And again, that would be all of our social media, our corporate communications internally and externally, and as well as our website. So the key legislation that we function under, again, with all other departments, is the Municipal Act 2001. Also, we follow the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. So residents are able to lodge an inquiry if they are looking for specific information on a matter. And we follow it's referred to as MFIPA for short. So we follow all those requests, and we have pretty stringent rules on how we're to reply and timelines and so on and so forth. The Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, which is touched on in our governance overview at the last meeting. Again, we'll go into greater depth with that as the orientation proceeds. The Elections Act, as stated before, our procedural bylaw, which you've seen the amended procedural bylaw. And again, that's everything that governs, it's all of our legislation that we have internally to govern our own meetings and our processes. We also handle a few bylaws that come up on an annual basis, such as the transient trader, which is any business operations that don't have a storefront, so they're considered a transient trader. They have a certain set of rules through our bylaw that they're to adhere to do business within the town of Renfrew in a safe and respectful way and still pay dues to the town to operate here. We also do the taxi cab bylaw, which again it governs our taxi companies and make sure that they're functioning in a safe way to onboard their drivers. And if residents have a complaint about a driver or a taxi company, they follow the bylaw to lodge that complaint. Also, our refreshment vehicle bylaws, which governs all of our food trucks and food vendors. Our website and social media policy, again, through our communications responsibilities, we do have a website and social media policy that staff are to adhere to and we adhere to as well externally. And we also process marriage and death licensing, so that's through the Vital Statistics Act. If people would like a marriage license, they come, and if we have deaths that occur, and our funeral directors come to get the license to apply for a death certificate. So we recently got our staff photos done, so I thought I'd highlight this. Very visual. So again, myself, I'm the clerk, Victoria Charbonneau. We've got Carolyn, who you've met multiple times. Yeah, the two girls were not a fan of me putting these up, but here they are. And Jenna McEwen, who you have not perhaps met, but she's our communications and marketing coordinator. Fantastic, also helps out with our signature events. So for moving forward for our key projects, we are in the midst of rolling out our electronic agenda management, as you see with your nice tablets and access to the eScribe portal. Again, we're trying to cut down on our paper usage and really move us forward electronically to access and process our documents. And feeding into that is a separate initiative for 2023 that will be electronic records management. So we'll be shifting the way we handle our documents internally. We'll be switching over to the TomRim system of filing, switching over to a program that provides better access and a more efficient usage of our records management and gives a pretty straightforward and streamlined approach to storing and distributing records. We will be developing a corporate communications plan in draft early 2023. That's going to outline how it's processes we already follow. However, it's going to provide some pretty explicit guidelines for how we handle communications externally and internally and provide further efficiencies and potential cost savings. A licensing review will be done. Again, those licensing bylaws that I just mentioned in the last slide, they haven't been looked at in a while, so we're going to look those over and find some efficiencies and perhaps modernize them a bit. And signature event support. We have discussed our bluegrass event, our craft beer event, all very successful. And again, we've taken on in collaboration with the BIA, the Santa Claus Parade event. We provide support to the Economic Development Department to bring those initiatives forward to the community. So through our communications and marketing coordinator, we provide support in that function.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much. And we will move on to Fire and Emergency Services. Chief Guest.
Thank you, Mayor Sidney. So I'll just highlight some areas of responsibility. The fire service in Ontario is regulated through provincial legislation that includes the Fire Protection and Prevention Act. So under the requirements outlined in the FPPA, each municipality shall establish a program in the municipality which includes public education with respect to fire safety and certain components of fire prevention. They should also provide such other fire protection services as it determines necessary in accordance with needs and services. So these three requirements are basically considered the three lines of defense under the FPPA, and they are public education, fire prevention, and fire suppression. Another notable requirement in the FPPA is a community risk assessment. Each municipality shall have an establishing and regulating bylaw which defines the level of service to be provided to that municipality. The Renfrew Fire Department is considered a full service department, which means it provides interior fire attack, auto extrication, hazardous materials. So basically we assess the risks of this community, then we establish the regulating bylaw which sets the level of service in an effort to mitigate or prevent those risks. Emergency management, the fire chief is also the CEMC, or Community Emergency Management Coordinator, and is responsible for ensuring the town has an emergency management program consisting of, obviously, a Town of Renfrew emergency plan, a program committee, and the Municipal Emergency Control Group. Emergency management in Ontario is guided by Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. So there's a few new additions to the Renfrew Fire Emergency Services, one of them being bylaw and regulatory services. So we will oversee contracted services for bylaw. The Municipal Law Enforcement Services has been contracted by the Town of Renfrew to provide bylaw, animal control services, and enforcement for the municipality in accordance with priorities and policies established by Council. So that service investigates complaints, conducts investigations, submits investigation reports, and takes appropriate action to prevent any continued offenses. And they provide this service in a timely and efficient manner. We also provide overall guidance and direction with respect to all bylaws and related programs, including property standards and clean yards. We ensure that all bylaws are enacted and enforced in accordance with applicable laws and guidelines. So some examples would be the noise bylaw, property standards bylaw, door-to-door sales bylaw, etc. Another addition would be the crossing guards. So the Highway Traffic Act sets out the rules of the roads in Ontario, including the operation of school crossing guards and the role that they play. There are several sections that refer to pedestrians and crossing regulations. Specific legislation related to school crossings and the operations of school crossing guards is found in section 176 of the HDA. So of particular importance is the fact that school crossing guards can only be assigned if the speed limit is less than 60 kilometers per hour. Key legislation, policies and bylaws, there are quite a few of them. I'll try to be brief. So as I mentioned before, the Fire Protection and Prevention Act, it speaks to offenses and enforcement, rights of entry, powers of inspectors. Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act basically states that every municipality shall develop and implement emergency program, and it discusses minimum requirements such as training, public education for emergency preparedness. Ontario Fire Code, and as well as the Ontario Building Code. So basically the Ontario Building Code builds or renovates, but the Fire Code maintains. So an example would be drywall, fire separations, smoke alarms, door closures. Those are all required in the Ontario Building Code, but it's a requirement on the Ontario Fire Code to actually maintain those items. National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA. So the NFPA is a global self-funded nonprofit organization. I'm sure everyone has heard of it. They have quite a few different standards, including NFPA 13, which is standard for installation of sprinkler systems. They have NFPA 1851, which is the standard for installation, care, and maintenance of bunker gear. We also follow the Occupational Health and Safety Act. We follow Health and Safety Section 21. So the Section 21 committee is comprised of members of the Professional Firefighters Association, and also the Association of Fire Chiefs, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and their objective is to advise and make recommendations on matters relating to occupational health and safety of all firefighters in the province. So this is kind of above and beyond the Ontario Health and Safety Act. So they have developed a manual of health and safety guidance and notes for the fire service. An example would be guidance notes on salvage and overhaul, which addresses safety considerations during those activities, such as building integrity and structural collapse. We also follow Renfrew Fire Department standard operating policies and procedures and guidelines. All corporate policies, including the Code of Conduct and Conflict of Interest policy, and just a few notable bylaws. We have the Recreational Open Air Burning Bylaw, Fireworks Bylaw, False Alarm Bylaw, and we also follow the Highway Traffic Act. I would just touch on staffing. The Renfrew Fire Department is considered a composite fire department, meaning it consists of both full-time and volunteer firefighters. Currently, we have 11 full-time firefighters, including the chief. Our full-time complements consists of a rank structure of 2 captains, 2 acting captains, and 6 firefighters, resulting in 2 firefighters on duty 24 hours a day. This allows for immediate response to any emergencies within the town or any neighboring municipalities. A key component to our operations is our complement of 8 volunteer firefighters. We're very fortunate to have them as part of our team. As you're aware, these individuals work full-time jobs and still make time to give back to their communities. Being a volunteer firefighter is a huge commitment, which requires an increasingly large amount of training, coupled with requirements of responding to emergencies day or night. We're also responsible for crossing guards. We have 9 part-time positions that work approximately 10 hours per week. Key projects, currently working on an RFP for the Combined Master Fire Plan and Community Risk Assessment. Comprehensive review of all department policies and procedures. Development of Renfrew Fire Department job description, as well as volunteer recruitment to ensure adequate staffing at required emergency responses. Review of fire prevention and public education activities, as well as an assessment of current and future training needs of all staff. And finally, ensure continued compliance with Emergency Management Ontario in accordance with the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does council have any questions? Hearing none. We will then move on to Infrastructure and Public Works. Director Aslan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Sidney. Now, there's going to be quite a few areas that are going to be touched on here. Each area is quite broad, but if we want to encapsulate the areas of responsibility, we can put them here as Public Works Administration. That's all the correspondence that may flow in or out of the department. Right-of-way management, and you can kind of think of that as all the utility companies wanting to chop up our roads and put infrastructure in the right-of-way. It is kind of a common corridor, and it's for use of all the utilities to run services to the residents of the community and beyond. So, what I call the real world public works operations. That's the stuff that's happening out. It's snowing. We got to plow the roads. We got to pick up the leaves. A tree falls down. So all the things that happen in the real world. And there are many services that touch each resident, from like opening the tap, flushing your toilet, to getting out of your driveway in the morning and driving safely down the roads. Another component is all the engineering, asset management, and mapping. So whenever there's a pipe or any construction taking place, we have to make sure things are the right size, that all the right details are going into the projects. So there's a lot of engineering evaluations that we do on everything from, site plans, subdivisions that go in, and any of the construction projects that we undertake. Departmental financial management, to sort of sum it up into the budget process, the operating budget and the capital budgets is a very significant part of the municipal piece of the pie, I guess I would say. The growth management, so trying to forecast and anticipate what's required in future developments. And we have a little map there sort of showing an excerpt of the water system layout, and we've had to think about putting water mains into new development areas, new growth areas that are not currently developed, and how does that water get from the water plant and ultimately to the sewage plant at the end of the day. So there's a lot of growth management work that we do, along with development charges bylaws. You're going to hear a lot about that in the coming months and years. Compliance management, so the province kind of dictates pretty much how we have to run our systems and the standards that we have to comply to. They're constantly sending inspectors and auditors, so we have to ensure that we remain in compliance with all our operations. Fleet maintenance and management, that's all the municipal vehicles. We do operate a municipal vehicle inspection station, sort of similar to you get a safety on your car. Well, we have that ability to authorize those certificates on municipal vehicles. Public works facilities, being the municipal garage, treatment plants, pump stations, water booster stations. So we look after that infrastructure. The capital works program, and we've been handed a new role of infrastructure approvals from the province. So before you had to apply to the province for ECAs for sanitary and storm, so they've handed that over to us now with some significant obligations. So if we look at the public works operations, it's 4 seasons, and generally I think you can all appreciate it's the roads, the summer and winter maintenance, snow storage and snow dumps, water and sanitary systems, storm systems, all the streetscape, boulevards, municipal trees, landscape, any of the signs that you see, either regulatory signs or any other sign in town, we usually end up having to deal with those. And fleet management, I think we talked about that. Facilities maintenance. We operate a gravel pit, one of the few municipalities that have their own gravel pit, and so we have some work to do in managing that. And Ontario One Call locates, so whenever anybody digs a hole in Ontario, they have to call Ontario One Call, and so we have to go locate our utilities many times per week for anybody digging a hole. Part of the department responsibilities is environmental services. That's all the water and wastewater and distribution, collection and treatment. The waste management services, so the garbage trucks go into the door, the recycling trucks, the material recycling facilities, the landfill site. We have to manage drinking water quality management system, so that's sort of an acronym. It's almost like the ISO certification in industry has. Well, we have to maintain a system like that for our water system. The environmental services also look at energy use, so we have regular reporting on things like salt use and gas and electricity uses in our municipal buildings. We have to meet efficiency targets governed by the province. And urban trees is becoming an issue. Emerald ash borer, a lot of ash trees are dying. There's a lot of those ash trees in our municipal right-of-ways, and so we have to kind of manage those resources and plan to make sure our streetscapes aren't going to be decimated by things like that. When you get into the legislation, there's volumes and volumes and volumes of legislation, but we can summarize them by the Occupational Health and Safety Act is a big part, the Highway Traffic Act, the AODA. So all those little plates that you see at the corner of all the sidewalks when we rebuild a sidewalk is, for compliance for the Ontarians with Disabilities Act. We operate and maintain things in accordance with minimum maintenance standards. So the province, I guess everybody was being sued because of trips and falls, and they would go back and say that the municipality did not build the infrastructure properly or they didn't maintain it. So they created this minimum maintenance standards that if you operate and maintain your systems in accordance with those standards, it limits your liability, in the future. Safe Drinking Water Act, and it probably has pages of supporting regulations, because after Walkerton, they wanted to make sure nobody in Ontario was going to get sick from drinking water again. So there's volumes of legislation associated with that. Environmental Protection Act. So if you think about any storm and sanitary sewers running into the river, and if there's overflows and contaminates, and if there's the potential to harm the environment, then an investigation will be launched and we'll be accountable for that. The Ontario Water Resources Act, which is backing up a lot of the sewage legislation. The Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act, that's a lot of legislation related to the recycling transition program, so we're going to hear more about that in our upcoming orientations. Bill 8, that's the Underground Locates Act, Municipal Act, Pits and Quarries Act, and the Federal and Environmental Protection Act. So on top of the provincial legislation, there's federal pieces of legislation as well that are critical. Okay, when it gets into the policies and bylaws, pretty much most things we do have been, I guess, developed over long-term, over the long term. So we've been doing things certain ways for many years. And we've created policies around that, like snow and ice control. And I know councils are always looking to satisfy ratepayers' concerns about snow removal, and we want more sidewalks cleared. But we do have policies that stipulate what we do, and any changes in level of service have to be well thought out as to the equipment that's required, the manpower that's required to do it, as well as are you setting a precedent now that you'll have to apply to the whole town, and that usually comes with significant costs. So I think changes usually happen fairly slow and carefully because they usually have a significant impact. There's parking bylaws, and I think Mike Guest, Fire Chief Guest, is going to help us out with that. Thank you. And storm and sanitary sewer use bylaws, and what happens when a sewer use blocks. There's policies around that. And waste management bylaws are written to kind of govern the waste management side of things. So staffing, there's 20 full-time equivalents in the infrastructure and public works team, which is like 24.3% of the workforce. So it's a fairly big part of the workforce. Consists of a director, an admin assistant, an engineering technician, an environmental officer that manages the landfill. There's landfill staff, two unionized workers there. A public works foreman at the garage, an assistant foreman, and 12 employees, unionized employees working at the garage. And I always kind of put that in terms of you wake up in the morning and you've got a driveway you've got to clear, and it takes you like 2 hours to clear your driveway. Well, the municipality has about 68 kilometers of roads, and we have to kind of plow the snow and salt them and get it fixed up in about 6 hours. So there's a lot of resources applied around those winter operations. The infrastructure and public works asset management system, the province has required us to create and maintain an asset management plan. A lot of the funding that we get is dependent on the decisions that we've made in the past and the decisions that we're making going forward on how we manage our assets. They want to see that we're building assets that we can maintain and sustain financially. And as well, the assets that we have to make sure that we are maintaining them properly to get the mileage and make them last as long as possible. So any part of the asset management program involves inventory of what we have, the condition evaluation of the assets, valuation of what they're worth. Selection of a level of service, both a community and a legislative level of service, a strategy on how we're going to maintain them financially, and and investments required to support each of these assets. And there's hundreds of millions of dollars in assets buried under the ground that nobody sees, and it's quite a liability. Now, some of the key projects we've been working on, the asset management related studies project, which rolled development charges bylaw update, a water financial plan, and that we were required to do to renew our water license. So that's been done. A water and sewer rate study was done last year in support of the water and sewer rates moving forward, and we're generally about at the point where we're like 2% increase per year is maintaining and sustaining our water and sewer systems. When I first came here 16 years ago, they were into the double-digit increases required to build up enough money to sustainably operate our water and sewer system. So we're in a much better place now, but our water rates are quite high compared to other Ontario municipalities because we have a new water plant, new sewage plant, and new water, like a rebuilt water tower. So our core infrastructure is in really good shape, which is good walking into growth and development where we have good core infrastructure. But we have a lot of streets that have water mains and stuff underneath that need to be fixed as well. So the AMP update, the asset management plan update for core assets has been done. And prior to the end of the year, we're going to have an update on the level of service and financial strategy, which is actually meeting a 2025 requirement from the province for our asset management plan updates. So other key projects that you're aware that we're doing on top of the asset management plan, the MTO connecting link projects, the Gillen to Mask O'Brien Road, which is now substantially complete, and we're going to be finishing that up in the new year. We've made application for our Mass to Wrangler section, as we talked about at the last meeting. Joffrey Hague Dufferin's committed to construction by Fulton's next spring. The master transportation plan's in progress, and we're going to have them here on the December meeting, December 6th, for a presentation on what that's about, and it's pretty exciting stuff looking forward. We've also doing some work at our water treatment plant to replace a low-lift pump. That's probably close to $80,000 worth of work, as well as the screen compactor replacement of the sewage plant, and that's being managed by Aqua, and that's about probably $70-some thousand as well. Biosolids option study to try to divert biosolids from our landfill, so we're currently working on that. We're working through the design of Argyle, Lock Hill, and part of Opiongo and Hall Avenue. That was a grant that we received to replace all the water mains. It's a very, very significant project, and we'll be talking to you soon about sanitary sewer works that are required under those roads as well. So that's the most significant project we have on the books right now. It's probably in the order of $5.5 to $8 million by the time we do our parts of the project. So we've also initiated designs to get project shovel ready on Dominion and Lynn Street, 8th Street, Maloney Road Culvert, and Monroe Avenue and portions of Harry Street. So those are currently in design. So that's pretty much it. That's a lot of information, and we'll try to break it down into further orientations coming up in the coming weeks. But certainly, if there's ever any questions about infrastructure or what we do, certainly pick up the phone, give us a call.
Anybody have any questions? Vivimo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Aslan, a number of people in the last election and as they were voting talked about increased building and bringing more people to live here, more businesses. So I think one of the things that, one of the first questions is some of these committees get stood up is what kind of capacity is left in the wastewater plant and the water plant in terms of being able to take on other projects.
Yeah, so when I was in the consulting world, I had the pleasure of working on the sewage treatment plant project, and back in the 2000 or actually in the 2000 era, the ministry was considering a development freeze on Renfrew because it ran out of sanitary sewage capacity. So we ended up building a plant. The plant has been designed for 10,000 population. Okay, that's sort of on an average day. And that was considering all the loads, all the storm water that was flowing to the plant at that time. Now since we did build the plant, we've been doing a lot of infrastructure work, which includes sewer separation of sanitary and storm systems, and that's freeing up some capacity in the system to accommodate further development. So at some point, we're quite a ways away from requiring another wastewater treatment plant upgrade. And when we get closer to a number, if the municipality is growing significantly, we may have to do some administrative work to basically, gain additional capacity. Our plant is functioning very, very well. The treatment performance is phenomenal. And we feel that with our continued storm sewer separation in our infrastructure work, that we could free up enough capacity to serve the municipality for a long time. As far as the water treatment plant, we're only using about a third of the capacity of that plant. So there's lots of capacity in the water plant to serve development. So part of our master planning work, we've done a water and sewer master plan that sort of looks at all the development areas, has forecasted what demands are required to support that. And the master plan shows that as the community grows, we're loading up certain pipes. There is some work that is going to have to be done to twin some trunk sewers and various things along the way. And that's why, just to touch on the development charges looks at what is required for infrastructure in the future to support growth. And then anytime there's a new building built, they contribute towards they contribute a development charge, which then helps fund those improvements that are required to support that development. So there's a big piece in helping to raise money through development charges to sustain those growth projects. But I know that was a long-winded answer to your question, but did I cover it all?
Very informative, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I'd add, I believe through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director, I believe our water consumption rates have gone down quite steadily over the last 8 years as well.
Yes, and if you think about it, everybody's selling water conserving appliances now. Like, so your dishwasher only uses a third of the water it used to. The water that comes out of your shower head is probably half of what it used to. So that drives down our consumption of the water plant, which then reduces the amount of sewage going to the sewage plant. So those are all positive things. But on the other hand, when people are using less water and not putting as much to the sewer, that affects the revenue. So our revenues are actually decreasing, which is putting some stress on the revenue side of things. So I think we've been able to manage those two competing interests. During the droughts that we had in 2012, we didn't have to initiate any water conservation measures in the community like many did. So I think we're in pretty good shape that way.
Any other members of council have questions? I actually have two. Not that I'm trying to put you on the spot, but because our council is so new, I don't know if you have it right to the number, but roughly about how many kilometers of pipes underneath this town?
I don't know what there's about 68 kilometers of roads. So then you basically have to, like, each of those roads has a water main, a sanitary, and some of them have more than one sanitary main underneath. So I think you're talking probably 80 kilometers of each of the kind of service that we have.
So
we have hundreds of fire hydrants, like 400 fire hydrants. We've got 700 valves in our water system. There's over 1,000 street lights, and we've just gone through an LED replacement program where there was 1,200 street lights replaced LED, and that's generated huge savings in energy, and that's being used to fund that capital program, the replacement. We've didn't talk about things like solar systems, but we have two Fit 3 solar projects. So the Mataway roof is covered with solar panels, and so is the water treatment plant roof, and the Mataway roof project is generating enough revenue to pay for the roof rehab that was done back 5 years ago. So there's all kinds of initiatives like that the town has undertaken to try to reduce the energy, reduce the long-term operating costs, which I think is a big target of what we're doing now. Is how can we maintain the roads and the infrastructure and do it more efficiently and reduce the overall long-term operating costs. Even the salt that we're applying to the roads, we're applying like 70% of the salt that we used to apply, and we have like computerized spreaders on our trucks, and we educate our operators, and that's led to a reduction in the amount of salt use because road salt is toxic to the environment, right? So you'll have to look at the cost, the environmental impact, and so the Infrastructure and Public Works Committee is going to have a lot of fun with a lot of different topics.
And I should just add, Mr. Mayor, there'll be two specific orientation sessions on Mike's team, because we know that those are top of mind and important, and big investments for our community. So the next week is kind of the public works side, and then environmental right after Christmas, so a month apart. So there'll be more to come in terms of that specific department.
Then my question can wait. All right, so hearing no more questions, I'll turn it over to Acting Director for Recreation, please. Mr. Ball.
Thank you, Mayor Sidney. So overall recreation and leisure for the town of Renfrew residents and visitors, maintaining upkeep of all parks, trails, and recreation facilities. Also, I feel like jack of all trades, kind of get pulled in multiple directions, different departments, which our guys, some days are happy, some days aren't, but usually always have a smile. Some of the key responsibilities: Mattawa Activity Center, there's an ice pad, community hall, the NHA, NHL Birthplace Museum is housed out of there, the Renfrew Wolves Junior A Hockey Club houses over there as well. Recreation Center has our administrative offices, gymnasium, fitness center, 3 multi-purpose rooms, as well the Visitor Information Center, McDougall Mill Museum, Millennium Trail, Mattawa Park Fitness Trails. We have multiple parks and green spaces: Fordington, Horton Heights, Howard K. Haramis at the Visitor Information Center, Hunter Gate, Kiwanis, Kinsman, Legion, Low Square, Mattaway, McConnell, O'Brien, Oddsfellow, and RCAF Memorial. Also at Mattaway, we also have the splash pad, 3 ball diamonds, 3 soccer pitches, and a BMX park as well that is not listed on this. So vast areas that our staff look after on a day-to-day basis. Key legislation and policies and bylaws: Parks and Recreation Master Plan 2010, which will need to be updated very shortly. Ontario Recreation Facilities Association guidelines, policies, and best practices. Parks and Recreation Ontario guidelines, policies, and best practices. Ontario Parks Association guidelines, policies, and best practices. Occupational Health and Safety Act, WHMIS, Technical Standards and Safety Authority, TSSA. This is big on our elevators and at our ice plant refrigeration with the ammonia and the brine. So it's a huge thing our staff are all trained on and know in case of emergency. Staffing within the Department of Parks and Recreation, there's 8 full-time, 7 part-time, and 3 term employees currently. The staff operate and facilitate Mattawa Activity Center, the Recreation Center. In the summer, there's an additional 6 to 8 summer students are hired for cutting grass, maintaining the parks, various other jobs, whether it's setting up tear downs, garbage throughout the parks and facilities. Within that complement, there's Acting Director of Parks and Recreation, a Program Developer, Administrative Assistant, a Lead Hand, 3 skilled operators, maintenance laborers, 1 full-time, 3 part-time, and 3 term, and 4 customer service representatives that work at the Recreation Center Monday to Friday, 4 till 9, and then on the weekends. Some of the key projects: asset management. Currently, the Mattawa Activity Center expansion, which is ongoing, hopefully end of March, early April for an opening. Mattawa Park Playground, which will be beginning summer of 2023. As I mentioned before, we look after Mattawa Activity Center, Recreation Center, the Mattawa Dog Park, 3 ball diamonds, the 3 soccer pitches, McDougall Mill Museum, Mattawa Park Tennis, and pickleball courts, which we just currently built this past summer and fall, and also the Visitor Information Center. So as you can see, there's a vast across the town that we look after for recreation and leisure, not just for in-town residents, but also out-of-town guests as well. We also have surrounding partnerships with Horton, Admaston, Bromley, McNabb, Braeside, and Greater Madawaska to use our facilities at a rate. We have a recreation agreement with that, so it's not just for the town of Renfrew residents. We also see multiple townships that around use our facilities.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Acting Director Wall? Councilor Legree.
Through you, Mayor Sidney, to Director Wall. I'm just curious with the Psych and Ice Pad, once it's up and running, like, will staffing levels be increased, or how, or will we be able to maintain what we have, or?
There'll be some tweaking. I wouldn't say necessarily full-time staff, but maybe some part-time. But we have already kind of discussed that in the last coming weeks. I think our compliments coming up that the position that just closed yesterday, and a couple new ones will complement what we need, expanding our hours and kind of expanding our staff and having some expanded hours for staff. The CSRs right now only work 5-hour shifts, so expanding their hours to cover various shifts. I think we can work with that to currently house what's going to be in the new expansion.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, we will move on to Planning and Development, and I will turn that over to our Director of Planning, Mr. Withers.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sidney. So planning and development, if you see anything under construction or being constructed or you hear about something in the pipeline, generally we're involved in it and have been for several months, if not years, before it becomes something on the ground. So in the Planning and Development Department, we kind of operate in the background. If things are growing really well, hopefully you don't hear too much from us or about us, and so, but certainly we we enjoy serving the town of Renfrew in our capacity. So in terms of our areas of responsibility, maintenance and implementation of the town's official plan zoning bylaw, being the master planning policy document and land use bylaw for the town. We process development applications in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. We implement certain delegated authority provisions that council is granted under the Planning Act, either as required or enabled. We issue building permits in accordance with the requirements of Ontario Building Code through the chief building official. We collect development-related fees in accordance with various bylaws, including the fees and charges bylaw for application fees, building bylaw for building permit fees, development charges bylaw, and cash in lieu of parkland dedication as permitted by the Planning Act. In coordination with the clerk's department, we do deliver signature events, including craft beer, food truck, bluegrass, and Santa Claus parade. That's led by the EDO in coordination with the clerk's department. The EDO is also responsible for maintenance of the town's real estate portfolio. We have a number of vacant properties that we're in the process of kind of evaluating and marketing what's appropriate for surplus and what should potentially be retained, or what maybe we should look at putting some more effort into planning before we surplus them, so that they're developed in a way that is good for the town. Marketing and promotion, again, in cooperation with the clerk's department, and implementation of the community improvement plan. So that plan allows us to provide financial incentives to businesses as an exception to the bonusing prohibitions under the Municipal Act. And so it's something that we put together. We review it periodically, and there are certain programs that provide financial incentives to businesses for the maintenance of their properties, signage, facade, windows, doors, landscaping, parking improvement, things of that nature. Key legislation, policies, and bylaws. So, of course, we have the Planning Act. It's changing all the time. A lot in the last year, probably more significantly, and just probably the most it's ever changed, certainly in my career, and even folks that I've worked with and that are retired have never seen anything like this. So it's changing a lot. The Building Code Act, which is more of a more static, but changes from time to time. Development Charges Act, again, probably a bit more dynamic and organic than we'd like it to be, but we do have Watson and economists that we rely on pretty heavily, and they're real good. Provincial policy statement. So this is high level, kind of top of the policy hierarchy. All municipalities and all development in the province of Ontario is required to be consistent with the provincial policy statement. We have the county official plan and the town official plan. The Planning Act requires that all development conform to official plans. The county official plan, of course, being the upper tier planning policy, and then we have our own official plan. The town of Renfrew zoning bylaw. So if you think of the county official plan and the town official plan providing general policy direction, the zoning bylaw lays out the exact physical parameters that development has to abide by. So when you're talking about setbacks, height, coverage, lot frontage, lot depth, all those kinds of things that you almost need a degree to interpret. We try to simplify it as much as possible. We always tell people if they have any questions, come talk to us. Of course, the community improvement plan, the community profile put together by our clerk many years ago, and will be maintained by the economic development officer. And that just provides a snapshot of the town of Renfrew and the business case for coming here and setting up shop here. And delegation of authority bylaw, which sets the framework for for the delegation of certain approvals that council has delegated to staff under the provisions of the Planning Act. So planning and development in terms of staffing, we have, of course, myself, the Director of Planning and Development, Chief Building Official, Tom Webster, Economic Development Officer, Dan Lavager, and Ashley Rathwell, our Administrative Assistant. And in terms of asset management and key projects, so we do deliver service to the Township of Greater Madawaska and planning and building. It's a relatively new partnership, probably a few months old. And the township was in need of a planner and a CBO. They had vacancies happen pretty close together. And so this was an initiative that we arrived at as an alternative to them retaining new staff. I think there's been a number of failed recruitments for planners and for other municipal staff that are just a bit tricky to hire right now, and so this partnership seems to be working. We have the official plan review kicking it off next year. The zoning bylaw we looked at in 2021. Going to look at that every 5 years or within 3 years, an official plan review. The Mayor's Growth Management Task Force is going to be an exciting project. Growth Management Study, which we'll look at in, together with the official plan review. The Growth Management Study will look at our anticipated population growth and employment growth and our consequent land needs for that. Secondary plans, so kind of excited about this. Secondary plans are a bit more detailed. They're like the next level down from an official plan, and they'll lay out, in many cases, the block layout where the streets can go conceptually, parkland, civic facilities like schools and things like that. They get identified in secondary plans. So it's an exciting project, and we're hoping to start with lands that the town owns behind the Algonquin Trail, kind of in the Mask and Innovation area. The town owns kind of like 150 acres of land or something like that back there. And so it's a unique opportunity. Not every municipality has the opportunity to kind of drive growth and kind of set the terms for what growth is going to look like there in the way that Renfrew is going to be able to. So, and this is the secondary plan is the way we kind of are going to launch into that. Again, signature events. We added the Santa Claus Parade this year. It's been done by the BIA in years past. That's actually this weekend, as the mayor noted, so that's exciting. Again, marketing of town-owned lands for sale development, so we're in the process of identifying those. We'll probably drone shoot them. We'll look at whether we enter into a relationship with a real estate firm or whether we try to market some of these independently. Attraction of new business. Again, our EDO is a big part of his role, is staying connected with the business community, keeping his kind of finger on the pulse there. And so we identify, certain things that council would like to see done in town, or certain types of development that it would like to see, whether, there's been talk of, a new hotel option or potentially some more restaurants, things like that, any business. Dan's a seasoned business professional. We're very fortunate to have him on staff, and he seems to know everybody. And we want to have a restaurant. Well, he's good friends with 5 restaurateurs, so we'll have one in town pretty soon. Attraction of new business, we talked about, and then e-permitting. So we are working on rolling out, something that's a first for Renfrew and is something that's kind of rolling out throughout the county. But it's going to be exciting. So basically what this is going to look at, instead of people walking in with a paper application, they'll be able to submit and manage their application online, which is going to be real slick for, large subdivisions. If you have a developer coming to want to drop 50 houses on you in one shot, they have 50, they can just do that electronically, and then be able to actually do inspections online. It's going to be some investment in some technology there, but it's going to be really good. And the CBO is pretty excited about it. And we have, again, Ashley Rathwell, who's really instrumental in that. She's working the back end of the system. And so we're currently trialing a system right now with a 30-month trial with a provider that Greater Madawaska uses in Arnprior. And so it's looking pretty good. And so we're hoping to be able to roll that out early next year. And I think that's it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any questions for the planning? Revimo.
Yes, there's been a quasi-project or an idea or concept that's been being kicked around for the past couple of years. It's the back end of Mattaway lands on Opiongo. Is that viewed as a potential secondary site or whatever, I think you call it, secondary plan?
Yeah, so that's, we kind of looked at two. That would be the other one. The thing with Opiongo Road, we really need to look at the servicing capacity of it. So that's just some details that we need to work out, but we are aware that that's a site that council has kind of identified as a priority. And so that'd kind of be the next step after the section beyond Mask.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yep.
Just wondering if there's good growth right now going on with housing, or has that slowed down due to the financing and pricing of houses? Has that slowed down at all, or are we still doing pretty good with that?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sidney. So I'm going to say some of the smaller projects have slowed down. We still have, I guess, you kind of start to see the bigger kind of the institutional projects roll out as the government, because you start to see when things slow down, the upper levels of government start to filter money down into some of these larger projects. So you're going to see the St. Joseph's, St. Thomas redevelopment moving forward. We're very close to issuing site plan approval there. Groves Park Lodge just come in with a site plan application for a new addition to that wing. But yeah, I would say we're seeing a bit of a slowdown kind of on the smaller private side. And we're certainly hearing about some kind of market changes in the market, and I think you're correct. I think it's related to the cost of money right now. There's no two ways about it. It's way more expensive than it was this time last year. But hopefully, whatever kind of slowdown we're in or coming into is going to be short-lived. And I think the thing to keep in mind is that you don't just sit around and wait for the next wave to come. Like, you use any kind of lull that you might have to build capacity and get ready for the next one. So that's not to say that we've got nothing coming in. It's still quite busy, and we're still getting things out the door. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Mayor Sidney. Quick question about the vacant land in Renfrew, like single dwelling homes. How many lots do we have in the town of Renfrew right now?
I'm going to go off the top and say it's probably between 4,000 and 5,000 dwellings, and I'm going off what I think was in the last census. I think our persons per dwelling unit's about 2.3. I say between 4,000 and 5,000.
Okay. How many vacant lots do we have within the town? Vacant, like there's no house. Because right now I know there's 3 just around the corner from my house. So how many throughout the town of Renfrew of vacant lots that the town owns that we could surplus or sell?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, because we own some that are very large, right? So, if we went through 15 of them, when we met, recently and kind of said we should keep this, we should sell this, we should keep this, we should sell this, just at the staff level, just as a first cut to what we would bring to council. I think it'd probably be in that neighborhood, but a lot of them are very large. Like, we've got the one behind the Algonquin Trail that's 140 acres, right? So it's not real helpful, like in terms of the raw number of lots, but.
So you say in your plan that you have it set up that you're going to market these plans. What's the timeline of marketing and actually putting it to council that you want to sell these vacant lands?
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mayor Sidney. So I think it'd be sometime next year. I think what we've got to, again, we've kind of gone through and identified which properties are probably good candidates to put on the market. So there's kind of 2 categories of properties. There's a few, like the town owns here and there, a few what you'd call lots that are ready to go probably for single-family dwellings. And you probably just go and list those with an agent. But then there are some bigger pieces. So you've got, around about 25 acres on Gibbons Road. You've got 140 acres behind Mass. You've got, I think it's between 12 and 14 acres behind One Innovation Drive. You've got, you've got upwards of, 200 to 300 acres of town-owned land that are not, you'd want to make sure that before you go and flip it, that you knew what was going on in there, right? And so I think that's what we're looking at doing with the secondary plans, especially the one behind Algonquin Trail. It's a really good candidate. We entered into agreements of purchase and sale. We'd want to be careful that we had some kind of control, whether it's repurchasing or what have you, to make sure that any commitments that are made by a developer that comes forward and says, I want to build this on this piece of land, that they do it or we buy it back, right? So.
Thank you for your well-explained answer. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Back when I was on council last term, we came up with a vacant lands that we could sell that was parkland. There was a surplus of land with the Parks and Rec. Is that still a viable option that we could look at in the future, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, through you, Mayor Sidney. Yeah, for sure. There's a few spots. I mean, without identifying any parcels in particular, the Parks and Rec Master Plan definitely does identify certain lots as being surplus, and that we could look at offloading, kind of at council's pleasure. So that's certainly an option. There might be some opportunity to kind of re-examine that, in light of, as an example, we have a subdivision application in called the Pinnacle subdivision. It's kind of at the end of Stewart behind the old Riocan. If we got 150 units in there in the fullness of time, does it make sense to have something in there? And we do own a piece of land back there, and does it make sense to either develop that or, come up with some kind of land swap so we get something a bit more central? There are a few different options, but yeah, there's definitely some surplus parkland out there, but we kind of work on that with Jordan to figure out, what we should be keeping and what we should recommend to council to offload.
Thank you. Any other questions for planning? Vivimo?
Sorry, not so much a question as, I think my memory is that we have, if not a bylaw, a motion that we passed which indicated percentages of potential land sales which would be directed into certain reserves and pots. So that might be something we want to pull out for the future when we start talking about declaring land surplus and marketing them.
I can just add, I think Eric did a good job of understanding that the growth plan, those secondary plans, are really about figuring out where growth's going to happen. There's a ton of land in our urban boundary that are zoned for future development, and that's because growth has been stagnant. So the part of the growth study is to say, no, we want those lands to be developed. They're serviceable. How can they be serviced? Then there's a ton of land that we own and say that's zoned for industrial use that might not all be used for industrial use, where other uses can be done. So Eric is on it in terms of the due diligence, and redoing the Parks and Rec Master Plan as an example, which was done in 2010, would help understand what lands we need and for what purpose and how they should be programmed. So there's a bit of kind of groundwork that has to happen over the next year to 18 months. And that dovetails really well with the Mayor's Growth Readiness and Highway Expansion Task Force, which will look at those things kind of at the same time. And Eric is hoping to use that as a sounding board on some of the other initiatives. So, and we don't have, we're going to review our land surplus policy and how we deal with those issues. But all those, unlike other places, we have a strong hand in terms of what we control and what we can do with the lands we own. And then on top of that, to the question about vacant lands, we know Hunter Gate has a future phase that has been pre-approved, but it's also getting the developers that own significant land within our community to have an honest, frank discussion with them about, okay, get on with it. And also, hopefully, market conditions will help So there's a big role for us to play in terms of the lands that we own, but also the due diligence on how we develop. And then the advocacy work to say we have lands within our urban boundary, we want development within our urban boundary because it can be serviced. So there's a lot of good work that needs to come. I should also point out that you'll have a specific session on December 13th specifically for planning and economic development. So Eric and the team will come back and can give you some more specifics. And then the task force is really aimed at kind of those questions we've been fielding tonight about really driving that home, which I think is important for everybody.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? I just want to add a comment that when you listen to Planner Withers talk about the land and where Renfrew is right now, it's you kind of get excited about the opportunities that are going to be able to come to Renfrew. So there's lots of great things coming. So is that where we conclude? Yeah.
I have a question for you. I've been noticing some of the directors saying, through you, Mr. Mayor, like, we're new at this. How would you like us to do this? Instead of just keep going and just looking and talking.
So just
I don't need that, but if that's
How would you like us to do it?
So generally, good parliamentary procedure is to throw everything through the chair so that it's not, hey, Aaron, what's the cost of gas? Or from councillor to councillor, like, Peter, I like what you just said there, but should be no Revimo. Revimo mentioned this, Mr. Chair, my question to staff would be. So it's just good procedure. And then it just ensures that we're not getting it's fine when we're all getting along and it's an easy question that everybody agrees on. It's when it gets a little more heated or you disagree with staff gives you an answer that you disagree with. That will happen. A few of us in the room that have been around for a while that have seen that. But going through the chair is a good way of directing traffic. It's just a good parliamentary procedure to follow.
Okay. I'm going to hand it over to the Renfrew Public Library CEO.
Thank you, Mayor Sidney. So it was interesting when I was asked to say our areas of responsibility, it got a little complicated. So I tried to kind of simplify things. So basically we are always changing depending on the needs of the community. But it's offering access to recent and emerging technologies, up-to-date, accessible resources and information. We also provide spaces for individual and communal creativity. We also provide services out of the library walls, so whether we're delivering items to the 3 seniors residences or running programs at the schools, etc. So we do also provide services and resources, not just in the library. And we're always looking for ways to help those in the community dealing with issues including food insecurity, homelessness, poverty, etc., by developing effective partnerships with other local organizations and connecting people. So our biggest job is connecting people with what they need, depending on what they're dealing with or what information they're looking for. It's sort of, we're just trying to get them the information that they require. One of the partnerships we did develop was with the local food bank. So we have 2 refueling stations for children and teens so that children can come in after school and grab snacks and stuff like that while they're doing homework. So that was one of the initiatives we did. And again, the programs, so we have programs for all ages from early literacy right up to we're currently running a creative aging program for seniors through a grant. So I think it's the legislation, we are the kind of odd duck. We are governed by the Public Libraries Act. It's legislation that has not been touched in a very, very, very long time. So while under the Municipal Act, there is a thing regards to boards and stuff like that, we do follow that. The Public Libraries Act actually is our main guiding legislation. And it's why we have that kind of strange, yes, we're with the municipality, but no, we're not. So I know the boards that I've worked with at the library really try to align with the town. So we try whatever policies, because we basically have to have all the policies that the town has to have, but we try to align as much as we can so that we're not going kind of out on our own and we're sort of, there's a synergy. So some of the other ones are the AODA Freedom of Information, Protection of Privacy Act, Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy. We have a lot on confidentiality. That's one of our main things. So anybody, we can't, without a police warrant, we can't give information on what books you've taken out or what your spouse has taken out, things like that. So that's sort of a very big thing for us. We also follow the Copyright Act, and then we have our own policies and procedures manuals as well. So currently, there's myself, and we have 5 FTEs. So the 3 full-time staff are a collections coordinator, a children's coordinator, and a circulation coordinator. And then I have, the team is made up of 3 part-time positions, and we have 3 student page positions. And then in the summer, we generally are able to bring in a summer student to help run the summer program as well. And we have volunteers, and we also do placements from universities and colleges. So we offer that as well. So our big projects right now, we did apply to Infrastructure Canada a little over a year ago for a grant for $2.8 million to redo the building that the Chamber of Commerce was in. Is actually owned by the library. It was purchased by the Library Board in the 80s. And we really would like to see that space used. We have sort of utilized every corner of our little 100-year-old building that we've been able to use, and we need more space to be able to continue to provide the services that we're being requested. So that's our biggest thing right now, and then we're also looking at developing our programming. We just finished a survey to see what the community would like to see in the coming year. We're looking at expanding outreach opportunities. A lot of our policies need to be, there was I think 10 policies that have been updated this year by the government that we have to make sure we're all on par with, and then we're also completing our fire plan for the building as well.
Does anybody have any questions? Revimo?
Thank you. Through you to the CEO of the library. Are you a unionized workforce?
Yes, my staff is unionized.
I just want to add, I think the CEO of the library and I have this very healthy debate that it's not just a library. To be honest, I would really like council to sort of take the opportunity to learn in depth the library, because they are what I would call our hidden superhero that saves the people that are vulnerable that we don't know about and we never see. So it's much larger than a Dewey Decimal System and just signing out books. And I think, if we're lucky enough to get that grant, you will see and even have the opportunity to talk to the CEO about that plan and what it's entailed. It's the library is a very valuable asset to this community, and I think we need to look at it as serious as snow plowing and Parks and Rec. It's vital for our community. So I just wanted to throw that out there on your free time when you're wanting to learn more. It's definitely one you want to learn about. So any other questions? I'm actually just going to end this part with more to the community and as well to council. The equivalent of 82 people do all this work to make this town go. 82 people. There are more people that work at Walmart. So, and then you have 7 council that has to kind of go with them. But I think we need to be really proud of our staff. They're fantastic. The one thing that's not in here is these are their jobs and this is what they do, but don't forget there's 7 council that'll go, hey, I need a press release done now because I was talking to a mayor and that wasn't in your plan and I need it done before the end of the day. And the multitasking is just unbelievable, and I think they're outstanding, and I think we really need to focus that and pay attention to that, because without them, this town doesn't move. So thank you very much to the staff. All right, so on to D51, council member appointments. The motion that Renfrew Town Council approve the appointments of council members to standing committees and other bodies is recommended by the mayor and outlined in Clerk Charbonneau's report of November 24th, 2022. And the secondary one is that Renfrew Town Council approve the continued appointment of Jeff Scott as the town citizen appointment to the Renfrew Police Services Board until its replacement by the Detachment Board. I need a mover for that. Rivimo, second by Councillor Legree. I will now turn it over to Clerk Charbonneau, I believe. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sidney. So I'll give a brief overview of the report. At the last meeting of November 22nd, 2022, Council approved the governance structure, which included the standing committees as we see laid out in the report. As Council is aware, but I'll let the public know who's watching, there was a survey circulated to Council to ascertain personal interests as well as professional strengths were also considered. And as outlined in the terms of reference as presented at the last Council meeting, that's what each standing committee and task force and working group and local board functions around. So each council member has been appointed to 2 standing committees, and it should also be noted that the mayor is considered an ex officio member on each standing committee. So what that means is by virtue of being in the office of mayor, the mayor is eligible to vote at every meeting that he is in attendance at. And as laid out in the report, you will see the standing committees and working group task force listed, along with the council appointees and other members of staff and/or the public. Also to note, Jeff Scott, who was formerly the chair of the Police Service Board, submitted correspondence that he was interested in assuming the position again and continuing on. So it's recommended to accept that as well. And to note, as stated in the finance comment, the chairs receive an additional remuneration of $750 per year and per committee working group task force that they're appointed to. And it's budgeted for our 2023 fiscal year. Also, it should be noted that in an effort to promote transparency and open government, our standing committees will proceed to be streamed and recorded like our current council meetings are. So the public has access to the material and decisions that will be coming forward to council from said committees. And also, if the public is wanting to track and follow these meetings, they can do so in the same fashion as they do with our council meetings. They can access the municipal calendar on our website. They can also contact the clerk's department if they can't access our website.
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
I just wanted to note, and I know the council members know it already, but the clerk's team are there for those that are newly chairs, which is all of you, with the exception of Rivimo and the mayor, but the rest of you are probably chairing bodies for the first time. So the clerk's team will review the first agenda with you and help you through that process. So you can contact them directly and they'll help. And I know, just to clarify, the mayor is ex officio on standing committees, but the terms of reference for standing committees, Rivimo asked this question last time, all decisions of standing committees rise to council for decisions. So even though there's 4 members, there could be 4 members if the mayor attends. It's just step 1 of 2 steps, which requires the ratification at council. And just to say that the workforce, the working groups and task forces are very important as well in terms of some of the initiatives the municipality will be pursuing. So there's a lot of good, important work to come, and what we'll do is we'll liaise, we'll connect the appointees to the local boards and those of you serving as liaisons so that they can interact with you and you can start building that relationship, especially if you're a liaison to one of the outside groups.
Councillor Legree?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO, sorry. The Police Services Board, I understand how the structure works now, but I don't really understand the replacement with the Detachment Board. Like, how do we have representation on that, or can you kind of just update us on that, please?
Certainly. So not all municipalities within the detachment have police services board, what we call Section 14. We do. However, all those boards across the province are being replaced with detachment boards. So the Renfrew detachment serves Arnprior as far down to Greater Madawaska, as far west to Whitewater region. Those municipalities, because they get along and are collegial, all agreed to a model for the detachment. We will see one member of council and one citizen appointment from the town. And then some of the townships will share a citizen appointment. They'll have to agree on a citizen appointment. And Police Services Board now and in the future will also have provincial appointees. So there's provincial appointments as well. So we did get correspondence. This was when Sylvia Jones was minister for this portfolio. They're saying right now that will happen no earlier than 2024. So yourself and Councillor McDonald will have to do rock, paper, scissors to determine who stays on. But we anticipate that's not happening for at least 2 years, at which time we're likely going to do a midterm governance review and just check in on everybody and seeing where we're at. So right now we have a police services board and Admaston Bromley does, nobody else does. So the detachment commander has to do direct liaison with those townships or towns, and then we're lucky that we have our own police services board. So we'll still have good representation on the new detachment board, probably around 2024, 2025.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Councilor McWhorter?
Through you, Mayor. First, I just wanted to correct, as a little sidebar, I just wanted to correct CAO Trombley. We're not all new to chairing committees. I've been on committees in the past numerous times. That sort of gets lost sometimes, but I've definitely been around. My other question was, are the subcommittees or the task force or whatever, are they being broadcast also? Are they under camera?
No. So the nature of the working groups and the task force is they're really important working groups, so they don't meet the definition of committee. So a majority of the members of the task force or the working groups are not members of council. However, council leadership on those are quite important. So for instance, on the inclusive, age-friendly and barrier-free community working group to be chaired by Councillor Dick with Councillor Legree and Mayor Sidney on there, it's really representation from all operational parts of the municipality as well as OPP in the library, and that's going to be about having good dialogue with various groups about the barriers they face. And that's going to be kind of hard chats with different groups about what's going on in our town and how we can address it. And same for the signature events, which is really about organizing, connecting. It's really like a group, and we feel that council is pretty important to doing that work. And we had good involvement for Bluegrass, as an example, from 2 members of council previously, so that's the nature of them. So they don't meet the definition of committee because a majority of the members aren't members of council, and they're really kind of behind-the-scenes worker bee groups that are meant to kind of understand an issue and bring it back to council. So that does not mean we go and work in the dark. It just means that we go and come back and do the foundational work that staff do every day, but that these groups will be helping with because, as the mayor said, these are really important and we don't necessarily have the staff resources to deal with these issues individually. We need to bring in either other people and members of council to help push them forward. So those don't meet the definition of committees. Standing committees will be open and recorded, and then the work of the task force and the 2 working groups will be reported regularly through standing committee and council. So the inclusion one, for instance, reports to strategic priorities and corporate services. Signature events reports to economic development, planning and tourism, as does the mayor's task force on growth readiness. So they're really about doing that foundational, behind the scenes prep work, and then that will flow through back to standing committees and council.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So we have a motion that was moved by Revimo, seconded by Councillor Legree, I believe, because it's not on. Do I need to read the motion again, or are we good? We're good? So I'll ask for a vote. All in favor? Well, that's carried. Thank you very much, Council. Moving on to external boards and county reports. The county Renfrew County News release, nominations for Warden's Community Services Award. I'm actually going to hand it over to the Warden to explain what that is.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to council and the community. There are 3 awards given out for individual, for profit and not-for-profit. The for-profit and not-for-profit sectors of our community are very generous in time and treasure in supporting any number of events across the county, and we wanted to recognize those, and I think we've done it now for about 10 years. And we always have 3 or 4 nominations for each section. So the package is on the County of Renfrew website, and you can take a look at it. It's pretty easy to complete. I have, when I wasn't sitting in the warden's chair, I've made 3 nominations, and I think 3 of them have been successful. One for an individual and 2 groups. So December 30th is the deadline to submit them, and we'll sit and contemplate them and then rank them and make an announcement on January the 25th. So it's a very valuable service to the community that we're recognizing. And as you know, the mayor noted earlier tonight, we couldn't do a lot in our community without our volunteers and staff working together, and these groups and individuals work with staffs of either our town or the rest of the 16 municipalities or the county itself. So we're very fortunate, and we should recognize those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are going to move on to K, which has a motion that Renfrew Town Council convene in closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Municipal Act 20. We're good? Oh, skipped up. Sorry about that. That Renfrew Town Council confirm the minutes of council dated November 22nd, 2022. Do I have a mover? Councilor McWhirter, seconded by Councilor. Any questions? All in favor? That is carried. Sorry, Councilor Sobalski, just kind of left my brain there. On to K. Technology, it's a wonderful thing. That Renfrew Town Council convene in closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Municipal Act 2001, 1, Section 239, 3.1.1, the purpose of educating or training the members, more specifically as it relates to one-on-one introductions of staff. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Dick, second by Councillor Agree. All those in favor? Carried. We are now in closed session. Thank you, council. We are now in open session. We just had a closed meeting where staff and council got opportunity to introduce themselves and talk about them and their backgrounds and stuff, so it was very good. Thank you for putting that together. I think we've all learned a lot. It was a good thing. Moving on to bylaws. L. So that bylaw 101-2022 and 102-2022 listed on the agenda of November 29th, 2022 be recorded as read and passed. Mover, please. Revimo, seconded by Councillor Sobalski. No questions? Anybody got any questions? Hearing none. All in favor? That is carried. And we go down to N, adjournment. We are now adjourned. It is 8:25 p.m. Thank you very much, council.